Ethan's thumb traced her cheek, and Clara leaned into his touch like she'd been waiting her whole life for it. "I love you," she whispered. His hand stilled. Something broke behind his eyes. "You're too beautiful for me, Clara." His voice was raw, aching. "Your smile, your kindness, the way you see something good in a man like me when there's nothing there to find. You deserve someone who can give you the world. All I've got is this broken-down life and a heart that's been told it's worthless since I was 10 years old." He pulled his hand away, and the loss of his touch felt like drowning. "Don't," she begged. "Please don't do this." But he was already stepping back into the darkness. Before we continue, please subscribe to this channel and stay with me until the very end. Comment below with the city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story travels. Clara hadn't moved from that spot for 20 minutes after Ethan disappeared. She stood there beneath those uncaring stars, her hand still half raised like she'd forgotten to lower it, listening to the silence he'd left behind. Finally, she dropped her arm and walked back to her truck, but she didn't cry. Something about the rawness in his voice told her this wasn't rejection, it was something darker, something he'd been carrying long before she'd arrived in this valley. She'd come to Sweetwater 3 weeks ago to photograph the ranch country for a travel magazine. The assignment was supposed to take 5 days. She'd stayed because of morning coffee at Rosie's Diner, because of the way mountains held the sunrise, because of a dozen small reasons she'd been telling herself right up until the moment Ethan Cole had looked at her with those storm-gray eyes, and she'd stopped pretending. The next morning, Clara found him anyway. He was fixing a section of fence along the northern property line of the Triple Creek Ranch where he worked. She parked her truck on the access road and walked across the field toward him, her boots collecting dew. Ethan saw her coming. His shoulders tensed, but he didn't stop working. "I'm not here to argue with you," Clara called out when she was close enough. He sunk another post into the ground with 3 hard strikes of the mallet. "Then why are you here? I have a job to finish. Photographs. The magazine deadline hasn't changed just because you decided to run away from something good." Ethan straightened up, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand. "I didn't run from anything. You walked away from me in the middle of a conversation. What do you call that? Being honest." His voice was flat. "Maybe the first honest thing I've done since you got here." Clara moved closer, stopping on the other side of the fence line. "You want honesty? Here's mine. I don't know what happened to you before I showed up, and I don't know what's making you believe you're not worth someone's time. But I'm not asking you to marry me, Ethan. I'm asking you to stop treating me like I'm too fragile to decide for myself who I spend time with." His jaw tightened. "You don't understand." "Then explain it to me." "I can't. Can't or won't, Ethan grabbed another fence post from the stack beside him, drove it into the ground harder than necessary. "What do you want from me, Clara? I want you to stop making decisions for me. I want you to stop deciding I'm too good or too beautiful or too anything. I want you to let me be a person who gets to choose same as you. You don't know what you're choosing. I know exactly what I'm choosing." Her voice didn't waver. "I'm choosing to stand in a wet field at 7 in the morning, talking to a man who'd rather break his back working than have coffee with someone who wants his company. That's my choice, Ethan. Mine. Not yours." He stared at her for a long moment. Something in his expression shifted, not softening exactly, but cracking just enough to let light through. "Coffee won't fix this," he said finally. "I didn't say it would, but it's a start." Ethan set down the mallet. He looked at the half-finished fence at the work still waiting, then back at Clara. "Rosie's, 20 minutes, I'll meet you there." She turned and walked back to her truck before he could change his mind. Big truck. Rosie's Diner sat on Main Street between the feed store and the post office. Clara was already in a booth by the window when Ethan arrived, and when he slid into the seat across from her, she noticed he'd changed his shirt. Rosie herself brought the coffee. "Well, look who finally decided to be social," she said, pouring Ethan's cup with a knowing smile. "Thought maybe you'd turned into a complete hermit out there." "Just busy, Rosie." "Mm-hmm. Busy." She winked at Clara. This one doesn't come to town much. You must be special. Ethan's face colored slightly. Rosie. All right. I'll leave you two alone. Holler if you need anything. She walked away, still grinning. Clara wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. How long have you worked at Triple Creek? 6 years. You like it? It's work. Ethan took a sip of his coffee, didn't meet her eyes. Pays fair. Boss doesn't ask questions. What kind of questions would he ask? The kind I don't answer. Clara nodded slowly. Okay. Different question then. What made you come here to Sweetwater? Ethan was quiet for so long she thought he might not respond. Then needed to disappear for a while. From what? From who I used to be. The honesty in those words settled between them like something physical. Clara didn't push. She just waited. I grew up in Texas, Ethan said eventually. Outside El Paso. My dad worked oil rigs when he could get hired, which wasn't often. My mom cleaned houses in town. We lived in a trailer that leaked when it rained and baked us alive in summer. I left when I was 17, told myself I'd make something better. Did you? He laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. I made mistakes. Big ones. Trusted the wrong people, took the wrong jobs, ended up in places I shouldn't have been. By the time I was 25, I had nothing except a reputation I didn't want, and a last name people crossed the street to avoid. So you came here. So I came here. Started over. Kept my head down. Worked hard. Stayed away from people. That must be lonely. Ethan's eyes finally met hers. Lonely's better than dragging someone else through the mess I made. I'm not asking you to drag me anywhere. I'm just asking you to have coffee. It doesn't stay just coffee, Clara. It never does. Maybe not. But maybe that's not the disaster you think it is. A muscle worked in his jaw. He looked like he wanted to argue, but instead he said, Why are you still here? The magazine work should have been done by now. Clara smiled a little. I extended the assignment. Told my editor there were more stories here than I expected. Were there? Yes. She held his gaze. There were. For 3 days they maintained a careful distance. Clara took her photographs. Ethan worked his shifts at the ranch. They saw each other at Rosie's in the mornings, spoke in careful sentences about weather and work, and nothing that mattered. On the 4th day, Clara's truck broke down. She was out on Highway 12 heading back from photographing the abandoned grain elevator east of town when the engine started making a sound like rocks in a blender. She managed to pull onto the shoulder before it died completely. Clara sat in the cab for a minute, weighing her options. Cell service was spotty out here. The nearest town was Sweetwater, 8 miles back. She was debating whether to start walking when a familiar truck pulled up behind her. Ethan got out and walked to her window. Need help. Engine died. I was hoping it was just overheating, but... Pop the hood. He spent 15 minutes examining the engine, checking hoses and connections, his hands moving with the confidence of someone who'd fixed things his whole life. Finally, he straightened up and wiped his hands on a rag from his truck. Timing belt's gone. You're not driving this anywhere today. Clara's heart sank. How long to fix it? Need to order the part. 2, maybe 3 days if the shop in Billings has it in stock. Great. She leaned her head back against the seat, closed her eyes. Perfect. I can give you a ride back to town. Help you get a tow truck out here. I'd appreciate that. She grabbed her camera bag and locked up the truck. When she climbed into Ethan's passenger seat, she noticed how clean it was inside. No fast food wrappers, no clutter, just a worn bench seat and a sun-faded dashboard. They drove in silence for a few minutes. Then Clara said, Thank you for stopping. Couldn't leave you stranded. Some people would. I'm not some people. She looked over at him. No, you're not. Ethan's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. Clara, I know. You're going to tell me again why this can't work. Why you're not good enough or not right or whatever story you've convinced yourself is true. But Ethan, I'm tired of hearing it, and I think maybe you're tired of saying it. You don't understand what you're asking for. Then tell me. Actually tell me instead of hiding behind vague warnings and walking away. He pulled the truck over to the side of the road, put it in park. When he turned to face her, his expression was raw in a way that made her chest ache. "You want the truth? Fine. I've been in jail, Clara. 18 months in county lockup for aggravated assault when I was 23. Got into a fight outside a bar in Lubbock, put a man in the hospital. He'd been hassling a waitress, wouldn't take no for an answer, and I lost my temper. Judge didn't care about the why, just the what. When I got out, nobody in Texas would hire me. The ranch here took a chance because they were desperate for hands and didn't run a background check." He paused, watching her face for a reaction. Clara didn't flinch. "Is that it? Is that it?" He laughed bitterly. "Yeah, that's it. I'm an ex-con with no education, no money, no future except the one I'm scraping together day by day. I live in a cabin that doesn't even have hot water. I eat dinner alone every night. I own 2 pairs of jeans and 3 shirts in the truck we're sitting in. That's my life, Clara. That's what I have to offer." "Okay, okay." His voice rose slightly. "That's all you've got to say. What do you want me to say? That I'm scared? That I think you're dangerous? I don't. I think you're a man who made a mistake trying to do the right thing, and you've been punishing yourself for it ever since." She reached across the bench seat, put her hand on his arm. "And I think the only person who can't forgive you for it is you." Ethan pulled his arm away gently. "You're making this into something it's not. I'm not some wounded hero waiting to be saved by the right woman. I'm just a guy who knows his limits." "No, you're a guy who's decided his limits before anyone else gets a say. That's different." "It's the same thing." "It's not." Clara's voice was firm but not unkind. "And you know it's not." They sat there in the stopped truck on the empty highway, the engine ticking as it cooled the Montana wind, pushing against the windows. Finally, Ethan put the truck back in drive. "I'll take you to the mechanics. You can arrange the tow." "Thank you." They didn't speak the rest of the way into town, but when Ethan dropped her off at the garage, his hand brushed hers as she reached for the door handle, and he didn't pull away quite as quickly as he had before. The next morning, Clara found Ethan at the Triple Creek barn mucking stalls. She stood in the doorway until he noticed her. "I brought breakfast." She held up a paper bag from Rosie's. "Peace offering." Ethan leaned the pitchfork against the wall. "For what?" "For pushing yesterday. I shouldn't have cornered you like that." "You didn't corner me. You asked fair questions." "Still, I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable." He walked over, took the bag, looked inside. "Biscuits and gravy. Rosie said it's your favorite." "It is." He pulled out the foam container, and for a moment something like gratitude crossed his face. "Thank you. Can I ask you something? Depends what it is. Why do you keep helping me? If you're so determined to push me away, why stop when my truck broke down? Why have coffee with me? Why accept breakfast?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment. "Because I'm not as strong as I pretend to be." The honesty in those words hit Clara like a physical force. She stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his gray eyes, close enough that he could have reached out and touched her if he'd wanted to. "Maybe you're not supposed to be strong all the time," she said quietly. "Maybe that's not what strength is." "Then what is it?" "Letting someone in, even when you're scared." Ethan's breath caught. For a second, just one brief, perfect second, she thought he might close the distance between them. But then he stepped back, creating space again. "I should finish these stalls." Clara nodded, understanding the dismissal for what it was. "Okay. But Ethan, I'm not going anywhere. Not yet." She left before he could respond, but as she walked back to her truck, she heard him call her name. "Clara." She turned. He was standing in the barn doorway, backlit by the morning sun, holding the bag of breakfast. "Thank you. For this. For all of it." "You're welcome." She drove away, and in her rearview mirror she watched him stand there watching her go until she turned the corner and he disappeared from sight. That afternoon, Clara's editor called. "I need you back in Denver," Melissa said. "We've got a new assignment. Big feature on the brewery scene in Fort Collins. Starts Monday. Clara sat on the bed in her motel room, phone pressed to her ear, feeling something inside her sink. How long will it take? Week, maybe 2. Why, you finished in Sweetwater, right? Almost. Almost? Clara, you were supposed to wrap this up 10 days ago. What's keeping you there? She thought about Ethan's gray eyes, about the way he'd said, "I'm not as strong as I pretend to be," about the careful distance he kept putting between them, even as something in him clearly didn't want to. Just tying up loose ends, Clara said. Well, tie them up faster. I need you in Fort Collins by Monday morning. This is a good opportunity, Clara. Don't make me regret giving it to you. I'll be there. She hung up and stared at the motel room wall. 2 days. She had 2 days left in Sweetwater. She found Ethan that evening at his cabin. It sat about 3 miles outside town, a small wooden structure with a sagging porch and a view of the mountains that made the shabbiness almost worthwhile. Clara had gotten the location from Rosie, who'd given her a long look before writing down the directions. "You sure about this, honey?" Rosie had asked. "No," Clara had admitted. "But I'm doing it anyway." Now she stood on that sagging porch, knocking on the door, wondering if this was the worst idea she'd ever had. Ethan opened the door in jeans and a t-shirt, surprise clear on his face. "Clara, what are you?" "I'm leaving Monday," she said. "New assignment, Denver." Something flickered across his expression, too quick for her to read. "Okay. I wanted to tell you myself, before I go. Appreciate that." They stood there separated by the threshold, neither moving. "Are you going to invite me in?" Clara asked finally. Ethan hesitated, then stepped back. "It's not much." She walked into a single room that held a bed, a table, 2 chairs, and a small wood stove. The walls were bare, except for one framed photograph of a sunset. Through a doorway, she could see a tiny bathroom. He wasn't kidding about the hot water. There was no water heater visible anywhere. "You live here?" The question came out before she could stop it. "Told you I didn't have much to offer." Clara turned to face him. "Ethan, this isn't you deserve better than this. It's what I can afford. The ranch doesn't pay you enough for a decent place. They pay me fair. I send most of it back to Texas. My mom's not doing well. Medical bills." That detail landed like a stone. Clara felt something shift in her understanding of him, not pity exactly, but a deeper comprehension of the weight he'd been carrying alone. "You've been taking care of her," she said. "Trying to. It's not enough, but it's what I can do." Clara moved closer to him. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because it doesn't change anything. I'm still the guy living in a cabin with no hot water, sending every spare dollar to a woman who barely speaks to me anymore because she's ashamed of what I became. That's still my life, Clara. Adding context doesn't make it better. It makes you better. It makes you someone who takes care of people even when they've given up on you. That matters." Ethan's jaw worked. "You're leaving Monday." "I am." "Then what are we doing here? What's the point of this conversation?" "The point," Clara said, stepping close enough that she could feel the heat coming off him, "is that I wanted you to know. I wanted you to understand that leaving isn't my choice, it's my job. And I wanted to give you the chance to ask me to stay." His hands clenched at his sides. "I can't ask you that." "Why not?" "Because you'd say yes. And then you'd wake up 6 months from now in this cabin resenting me for keeping you in a place that's too small for who you are. You'd look at me and see all the things you gave up, and I can't—" His voice cracked. "I can't watch that happen." Clara reached up and put her hand on his cheek. He flinched, but didn't pull away. "You're so convinced you know how this ends," she whispered. "You've already written the whole story in your head, and you've made yourself the villain. But Ethan, what if you're wrong? What if the story you're afraid of isn't the one we'd write? I'm not wrong." But his voice wavered. "Then prove it. Let me stay for 1 more week. Just 1. Give us 7 days to see if this thing between us is real, or if it's just me being a romantic fool. Clara. 7 days, Ethan. And then if you still want me to go, I'll go. No arguments, no drama. But give us the chance to find out. He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were bright with something that looked almost like pain. I can't give you what you deserve. Stop deciding what I deserve. Let me decide that. You'll regret it. Maybe. But it'll be my regret, not yours. They stood there, her hand still on his face, his breathing uneven. The cabin was silent except for the wind outside and the hammering of Clara's heart. 1 week. Ethan said finally, the words pulled from somewhere deep and reluctant. 1 week. Clara dropped her hand and stepped back, giving him space. I should go. Let you think about this. Clara. She turned back. Why? He asked. Why are you fighting this hard for someone like me? She smiled, sad and certain all at once. Because someone should, and because maybe somewhere under all that armor you wear, you want someone to. She left him standing in that bare cabin, and as she drove back to town, through the gathering darkness, she thought about all the ways people save themselves by finally letting someone else try to save them too. She called her editor from the motel that night and bought herself 7 days. Melissa wasn't happy. Clara, this is getting unprofessional. What's in Sweetwater that's worth jeopardizing your career? A story, Clara said, which wasn't entirely a lie. Something bigger than I expected. It better be Pulitzer-worthy at this rate. Clara hung up and sat on the edge of the bed, wondering if she'd just made the smartest or stupidest decision of her life. The next morning, Ethan showed up at her motel room door at 6:30 with 2 cups of coffee and an expression that said he hadn't slept. Figured we should start this right, he said when she opened the door. If we're doing this, we're doing this. Clara took one of the cups, stepped back to let him in. You look terrible. Didn't sleep much. Second thoughts. About 100 of them. He sat down in the chair by the window, cradling his coffee. But I gave you my word. 1 week. You can still change your mind. I know. His eyes met hers. I'm not going to. Clara felt something warm unfold in her chest. Okay then. So what do we do with our first day? I have to work. Ranch doesn't stop because I'm having a crisis. Can I come with you? Ethan looked surprised. To the ranch. Unless that's against the rules. No rules against it. Just don't know why you'd want to spend your day watching me fix fences and feed cattle. Maybe I like watching you work. Something in his expression shifted, vulnerable and uncertain. You're serious. Completely serious. Besides, I brought my camera. Could get some good shots. All right then. He stood up, set down his coffee. Fair warning, though, it's not glamorous work. I didn't come here for glamorous. They drove out to Triple Creek in his truck, the morning light turning the valley gold. The ranch sprawled across 1,500 acres, owned by a man named Jack Morrison, who Ethan said was fair, but hard. He gave me a job when nobody else would, Ethan told her as they parked near the main barn. Didn't ask about my past, just told me to show up on time and work honest. I owe him for that. Jack himself appeared as they were getting out of the truck. A weathered man in his 60s with sharp blue eyes that took in Clara with frank curiosity. This the photographer? He asked Ethan. Yes, sir. Clara Hayes. She'll be shadowing me today if that's all right. Jack extended his hand to Clara. Jack Morrison. Welcome to Triple Creek. Just stay clear of the bulls and don't spook the horses. Yes, sir. He turned back to Ethan. North pasture fence is down. Cattle got through last night. Need you to round them up and get that section repaired before they wander any further. I'll handle it. Jack nodded and walked away. Clara noticed how Ethan's posture had changed, straighter, more formal. This was a different version of him than the one who'd sat in her motel room chair, looking uncertain. He's intimidating, Clara said quietly. He's good people. Doesn't suffer fools, but he's fair. Ethan headed toward the barn. Come on. We've got work to do." The next 4 hours taught Clara more about Ethan than all their previous conversations combined. She watched him work with an economy of movement that spoke of years of practice, rounding up scattered cattle, repairing broken fence posts, his hands sure and steady even when the work was backbreaking. He didn't talk much while he worked, but every so often he'd glance over at her to make sure she was okay. And something about those small gestures said more than words could have. "You're good at this," Clara said during a water break. Ethan wiped sweat from his forehead. "It's just ranch work." "It's more than that. You know what you're doing. You care about doing it right." "Caring doesn't make it special." "Yes, it does." She took a drink from her water bottle. "Most people just go through the motions. You don't." He looked uncomfortable with the praise. "You getting what you need for your photographs." "More than I need." She showed him a few shots on her camera, Ethan, against the fence line, Ethan working with the cattle, his profile stark against the morning sun. "These are good. Just pictures of me working. They're pictures of someone who knows who he is when he's doing what he loves. That's rare, Ethan." He handed the camera back without comment, but she saw the tension in his jaw. They broke for lunch around noon. Ethan pulled sandwiches from a cooler in his truck, simple ham and cheese, nothing fancy. "Made these this morning," he said, handing her one. "Figured you might be hungry. You made me lunch. Didn't want you to starve." Clara bit into the sandwich and tasted something she hadn't expected: thoughtfulness. He'd even remembered she didn't like mustard, had used mayonnaise instead. "This is good, thank you." They ate in the truck bed, legs dangling over the tailgate, looking out at the mountains. For a few minutes, neither of them spoke. Then Clara said, "Tell me something true." "What kind of something?" "Anything. Just something real that you've never told anyone else." Ethan was quiet for a long time. "I'm scared all the time," he said finally. "Of failing. Of people seeing who I really am underneath all this. Of being my father, angry and bitter and taking it out on everyone around me. That's why I stay alone. Not because I want to, because I'm terrified of what happens if I don't." Clara's chest ached. "You're nothing like that. You don't know that." "I do know that. Your father wouldn't have stopped to help me when my truck broke down. He wouldn't send his money to take care of someone who's ashamed of him. He wouldn't be sitting here being honest about his fear. You're not him, Ethan. You're the person he should have been." "You make it sound simple." "It's not simple, but it's true." Ethan looked at her, then really looked at her, and something in his expression cracked open. "What are you doing to me, Clara?" "Giving you a week, that's all. Just a week to see what happens when you stop running." "And what if I can't stop?" "Then I'll know I tried, and so will you." He reached over and took her hand. The gesture was tentative, uncertain, but he didn't let go. They sat there in the truck bed, holding hands, while the wind moved through the grass, and the mountains stood witness, and Clara thought this might be the most honest moment she'd ever shared with anyone. That evening, Ethan took her to his cabin and cooked dinner. It wasn't much pasta with jarred sauce, a salad from a bag, but he'd cleaned the place and put a candle on the table, and Clara understood what that effort meant, coming from a man who lived deliberately small. "You didn't have to do all this," she said. "Wanted to. Figured if we're doing this week right, I should at least try." They ate at the small table, knees almost touching in the cramped space. Clara asked him about Texas, about his childhood, and slowly, piece by piece, Ethan gave her the story he'd kept locked away. "My father used to say I was worthless," he told her. "Every time I failed at something, every time I wasn't good enough, he'd tell me I was exactly what he expected, nothing special. I believed him for a long time. Sometimes I still do. He was wrong. Was he? Look at where I ended up. Look at what I became. I am looking. I see someone who survived something hard and came out the other side still trying to do right. That's not worthless, Ethan. That's the opposite." He shook his head, but she could see her words landing somewhere inside him, creating small cracks in the armor he wore. After dinner, they sat on the cabin porch, watching the sun set over the mountains. Ethan had brought out 2 chairs and a blanket, and when the temperature dropped, he draped it over Clara's shoulders without asking. "Thank you," she said. "You cold. A little. But I mean thank you for tonight, for letting me in." Jury's still out on whether that was smart. Clara shifted her chair closer to his. "Can I tell you something true now?" "Fair's fair. I'm scared too. Not of you, of this. Of how much I already care about someone I've only known for 3 weeks. Of what happens when this week ends and I have to make a choice between staying and leaving. I'm scared that no matter what I choose, I'm going to regret it." Ethan turned to look at her. "What do you want to choose?" "I don't know yet. Ask me in 6 days." They sat in silence for a while longer. Then Ethan said, "Stay tonight." Clara's heart jumped. "What? Not like that. I mean, I have a couch. It's not comfortable, but it's here. I just don't want you driving back to town in the dark." "Okay," Clara said softly. "I'll stay." She slept on his couch under the blanket that smelled like wood smoke and Montana wind, and sometime in the night, she woke to find Ethan sitting in the chair across from her, watching her with an expression she couldn't read in the darkness. "Can't sleep," she whispered. "Just making sure you're real." "I'm real." "I know, that's the problem." The next 3 days fell into a rhythm. Clara spent her mornings with Ethan at the ranch, afternoons editing photographs, at Rosie's diner evenings back at his cabin, cooking dinner and talking until the stars came out. They didn't kiss, didn't cross that physical line, but the intimacy between them grew in other ways, shared silences, small touches, the way they'd started finishing each other's sentences. On the 4th day, everything changed. Clara was at Rosie's editing photos when a woman walked in, mid-50s, expensively dressed, completely out of place in the small-town diner. She looked around like she was searching for someone, and when her eyes landed on Clara, she walked straight over. "You're the photographer," the woman said. It wasn't a question. "I am. Can I help you?" "My name is Margaret Cole. I'm Ethan's mother." Clara's stomach dropped. "Oh, he didn't mention you were coming." "He doesn't know I'm here." Margaret sat down across from Clara without being invited. "I need to talk to you about my son. Maybe you should talk to Ethan instead. I tried, he won't see me. Sends me money but won't return my calls. So I came here to understand why, and what I found was you." "Mrs. Cole, let me be clear, Miss Hayes. My son has been running from his past for 6 years. He's finally built something stable here, and I won't let anyone jeopardize that, not even someone who means well." Clara felt anger spark in her chest. "You think I'm jeopardizing his stability? I think you're temporary. You're a photographer from Denver passing through town. You'll leave, and he'll be the one left dealing with the wreckage." "That's not, isn't it?" Margaret's voice was sharp. "Tell me honestly, are you planning to stay in Sweetwater? Give up your career, your life in Denver, to live in a cabin with no hot water, with a man who can barely support himself, let alone a family?" Clara opened her mouth and found she had no answer. Margaret stood up. "I thought not. Do him a favor, Miss Hayes. Leave now before he gets hurt worse. He's been through enough because of me. He doesn't need more pain from someone who can't commit to staying." She walked out of the diner, leaving Clara sitting there with her laptop and photographs, and a truth she'd been avoiding: she hadn't actually decided whether she could stay. She'd been so focused on convincing Ethan to let her in that she hadn't asked herself the harder question: what happens after the weekends? Clara called Ethan. "Can you meet me now?" "What's wrong?" "I need to talk to you. It's important." He met her at the cabin 20 minutes later, still in his work clothes, concern clear on his face. "What happened?" "Your mother was here, in Sweetwater. She came to the diner." Ethan went very still. "What did she say to you?" "She asked me if I was planning to stay, if I was going to give up my life to be here with you." Clara's voice shook, and I realized I don't know the answer. "Clara!" "No, let me finish. I've been pushing you to open up, to let me in, to take a chance on this. But I haven't been honest about what I'm offering. I have a career I love, an apartment in Denver, a life I've built, and I don't know if I can walk away from that, even for you." Ethan's face had gone carefully blank. You're leaving. I don't know what I'm doing. That's the problem. Then what was this week for? What was any of this for if you were just going to leave anyway? To see if it was real. To give us a chance. A chance at what? A week of pretending we could make this work before you go back to your real life and I go back to being alone. His voice was rising. You want to know why I didn't want to do this? This is why. Because I knew you'd leave. Everyone always does. That's not fair. Isn't it my father left when I was 12? My mother stopped believing in me before I was 20. Every person I've ever cared about has decided I wasn't worth the trouble of staying. Why would you be any different? Because I'm here. Because I'm trying. Trying isn't the same as staying, Clara. And I can't do this again. I can't let myself hope and then watch you walk away. The words hit Clara like a slap. So what are you saying? I'm saying maybe my mother was right. Maybe this was a mistake from the beginning. Maybe I should have stuck with my first instinct and kept my distance. You don't mean that. Don't I? Ethan's eyes were bright with something that looked like pain. You're going to leave. Whether it's Monday or next month or a year from now, you're going to wake up and realize this life isn't enough for you, that I'm not enough. And I'd rather end this now than wait for that day to come. Clara felt tears burning her eyes. I'm not asking for promises, Ethan. I'm just asking for honesty about what we both want. What I want doesn't matter. It never has. Stop saying that. Stop deciding you don't deserve good things. I'm not deciding anything. I'm just facing facts. You have a whole life waiting for you in Denver. I have this cabin and a job that barely pays enough to survive. We're not on the same level, Clara. We never were. So that's it. You're going to push me away again because you're scared. I'm being realistic. You're being a coward. The words hung between them sharp and unforgiving. Ethan flinched like she'd hit him. Get out, he said quietly. Ethan. Get out of my house, Clara. Go back to your motel. Go back to Denver. Just go. Clara grabbed her bag with shaking hands. At the door, she turned back. For what it's worth, I think you're wrong. About yourself, about us, about all of it. But I can't make you see that. Only you can. She left, and this time when she drove away, she didn't look in the rearview mirror. She spent the next day packing her things at the motel, her phone silent. Ethan didn't call. She didn't call him. The week they'd promised each other had collapsed into bitter words and old wounds, and Clara couldn't see a way to fix it. On her last evening in Sweetwater, Rosie found her at the diner. Heard you're leaving, Rosie said, sliding into the booth across from her. News travels fast. Small town honey. Everything travels fast. Rosie studied her face. You gonna tell me what happened between you and that boy? He pushed me away. Again. And you let him? Clara looked up sharply. What was I supposed to do? He told me to leave. Ethan Cole has been telling people to leave since the day he got here. Doesn't mean it's what he actually wants. Rosie leaned forward. You know what his problem is? He's spent his whole life being told he's not good enough. By his daddy, by his mama, by every person who looked at his record and decided he was trash. And now here you come, someone actually good and kind, and his brain can't make sense of it. So he does what he knows how to do. He runs you off before you can run off yourself. I wasn't running off. Weren't you? Rosie's voice was gentle but firm. His mama showed up and asked if you were staying and you didn't have an answer. That's running, honey. Just a different kind. The truth of it settled over Clara like a weight. I don't know how to stay. I don't know how to make it work. Nobody knows how to make it work at the beginning. That's what faith is for. You jump and figure out the flying part on the way down. Rosie stood up. Question is he worth the jump? Because if he is, you better tell him before you leave tomorrow. Give him something to hold on to besides that fear of his. Clara sat in the empty diner long after Rosie walked away, thinking about jumps and faith and all the ways fear makes people small. That night, she drove back to Ethan's cabin one last time. His truck was there, which meant he was home. Clara sat in her car for a full minute hands gripping the steering wheel before she found the courage to get out. She knocked. No answer. She knocked again, harder this time. "Ethan, I know you're in there. Your truck's here and the light's on. Open the door." Silence. "I'm not leaving until we talk. I'll stand out here all night if I have to." The door opened. Ethan stood there, looking like he hadn't slept in 2 days, his eyes shadowed and his jaw tight. "What do you want, Clara?" To finish the conversation we started. The real one, not the one where we both got scared and said things we didn't mean. "I meant what I said." "No, you didn't. You meant the fear talking through you. There's a difference." She pushed past him into the cabin before he could stop her. "Rosie told me something tonight. She said you've been running people off your whole life because you're so convinced they're going to leave anyway. And she's right, isn't she? That's exactly what you did to me." I was protecting both of us. From what? From being happy? From taking a chance on something good? Clara turned to face him. "Your mother came here to scare me off. She told me I'd leave you eventually, that I couldn't commit to this life. And you know what the worst part was? She was half right. Not because I don't care about you, I do more than I expected to, but because I was so busy trying to get you to let me in, that I never stopped to figure out what I was actually offering." Ethan's expression flickered. "So what are you offering?" "I don't know yet. And that's the honest truth. I have a job I love and a life in Denver that matters to me. I can't just throw that away on a whim. But I also can't walk away from you without trying to figure out if there's a way to make this work. There isn't. How do you know? Have you even tried to imagine it? Or did you just decide it was impossible the second things got complicated?" "Clara, answer the question, Ethan. Did you even try?" His hands clenched at his sides. "What's the point of trying when the math doesn't work? You live 4 hours away. You have a career that takes you all over. I have a job I can't leave, and a mother I'm supporting. How do we make that work without one of us sacrificing everything? I don't know, but maybe we could figure it out together instead of you deciding for both of us that it's hopeless. You're asking me to have faith in something I've never seen work. I'm asking you to have faith in us. In what we've built in 3 weeks. In what we could build if you just stop running." Ethan turned away from her, his shoulders rigid. "You should go back to Denver. Finish your assignment. Live your life." "Is that what you really want?" "It's what makes sense." "That's not what I asked." Clara moved closer to him. "Look at me, Ethan. Look at me and tell me you want me to leave." He turned slowly. When their eyes met, she saw everything he was trying to hide. The longing, the fear, the desperate hope he was crushing under the weight of his own certainty. "I can't give you what you need," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You keep saying that like you know what I need better than I do, but you don't. You don't get to decide my needs, Ethan. Only I do. Then what do you need? Tell me. Because from where I'm standing, you need someone stable. Someone who can offer you a future that doesn't involve freezing in a cabin every winter and scraping by on ranch wages. Someone who doesn't send you away every time he gets scared. That's not me, Clara. That's never going to be me." Clara closed the distance between them until she was close enough to see the gold flecks in his gray eyes. "What I need is someone honest. Someone brave enough to be vulnerable. Someone who fights for the people he loves instead of pushing them away to protect himself. You could be that person, Ethan. You already are when you let yourself. You're making this harder than it needs to be." "Good. It should be hard. Anything worth having is hard." Before he could respond, headlights swept across the cabin windows. They both turned to look as a car pulled up outside, not a truck, but a sedan that looked expensive even in the darkness. "Who's that?" Clara asked. Ethan's face had gone pale. "That's my mother's rental car." Margaret Cole got out and walked to the door. She knocked once, sharp and authoritative. Ethan opened it, his expression carefully neutral. "Mom." "Ethan?" Margaret's eyes flicked to Clara. "Miss Hayes, I see you didn't take my advice." "No, ma'am, I didn't." Margaret pushed past her son into the cabin. "We need to talk, all 3 of us." "There's nothing to talk about," Ethan said. You shouldn't have come here. I came because someone had to. Margaret pulled an envelope from her purse, held it out to Ethan. Your father is dying. The words landed like a physical blow. Ethan didn't take the envelope. What? Lung cancer, stage 4. He has maybe 3 months. Margaret's voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly. He wants to see you. No. Ethan. I said no. He walked out on us. He made my childhood hell before that. I don't owe him anything, especially not a deathbed reconciliation. Clara watched the tension in Ethan's body, saw the way his hands had curled into fists. Margaret saw it too. He's still your father, Margaret said quietly. He stopped being my father the day he told me I was a mistake he wished he could take back. I was 10 years old, Mom. 10. And you stood there and let him say it. Margaret flinched. I know. I know I failed you. Both of us did. But he's dying, and he wants to make it right. It's too late to make it right. Maybe. But what if you regret not going? What if 10 years from now, you wish you'd had the chance to tell him everything you've been carrying all these years? Ethan looked at Clara, something desperate in his expression. She didn't know what to say. This was his choice, his pain. Why are you really here, Mom? Ethan asked. Because I don't believe you drove all the way to Montana just to deliver a message. You could have called. Margaret's composure cracked slightly. Because I'm ashamed. Because I stood by and let him destroy your self-worth, and then when you needed me most after you got out of prison, I was too embarrassed to stand by you. I let my pride matter more than my son, and I've been trying to make up for it by sending you money and hoping that would be enough, but it's not. It never was. So now what you want, forgiveness. I want a chance to do better, to be the mother I should have been. Margaret's eyes were wet. And I want you to have the closure you deserve, even if you don't think you need it. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Where is he? El Paso, in hospice. I can't just leave. I have responsibilities here. Jack Morrison already knows. I called him before I came here. He said to take whatever time you need. Clara saw the moment Ethan realized he was cornered, that all his excuses had been stripped away. He looked at her again, and she saw the question in his eyes. Go, Clara said softly. Deal with this. It's important. Come with me. The request caught her off guard. What? Come with me to Texas. I don't want to do this alone. Margaret looked between them. Miss Hayes, I owe you an apology. I was wrong to try to scare you off. I thought I was protecting Ethan, but I was really just protecting myself from watching him get hurt again. If he wants you there, you should go. Clara's mind raced. She was supposed to be in Denver in 2 days. She had an assignment waiting an editor who was already annoyed with her. But looking at Ethan's face, seeing the vulnerability there, she knew there was only one answer she could give. Okay, she said. I'll come. They left the next morning. Clara called her editor from the road, told Melissa she had a family emergency and needed another week. Melissa's response was ice cold. This is your last extension, Clara. 1 more week, and then you're either in Denver or you're fired. Your choice. Clara hung up and looked at Ethan driving beside her. He'd been quiet since they left Sweetwater, his hands tight on the steering wheel. You okay? She asked. No, but I will be. They drove south through Montana, into Wyoming, stopped for the night in Cheyenne. The motel was cheap and slightly run down, but it had 2 beds and hot water which felt like luxury after Ethan's cabin. That night, lying in the dark with Ethan in the bed 3 feet away, Clara said, Tell me about him, your father. Ethan was quiet so long she thought he'd fallen asleep. Then, his name is Robert Cole. He was a mean drunk and a meaner sober person. Used his fists more than his words. Told me I was worthless so many times I started believing it was my name. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just be ready for what you're walking into. He's not going to be some sweet dying man looking for redemption. He's going to be the same bastard he always was, just weaker. Then why are we going? Because my mother was right about one thing. I don't want to regret not going. I want to look him in the eye one more time and know that I'm better than he ever gave me credit for. Clara reached across the space between the beds and found his hand in the darkness. You are better. You're so much better than he could ever see. Ethan held her hand like it was the only thing keeping him anchored. I'm scared, Clara. I'm scared I'll get there and all that anger I've been carrying will just disappear. Or worse, that it won't. That I'll still be that 10-year-old kid desperate for his father to love him. Whatever happens, you're not alone. I'm here. Why? Why are you doing this for me? Clara thought about all the easy answers she could give, all the ways she could deflect. Instead, she told him the truth. Because somewhere in the last 3 weeks you stopped being just a cowboy in Montana and became someone I can't imagine my life without. And that terrifies me, but I'm done running from things that scare me. She felt him tense. Clara, you don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know. They fell asleep holding hands across the space between beds, and when Clara woke in the middle of the night, Ethan had moved to sit in the chair beside her bed, watching over her like he was afraid she might disappear. They reached El Paso late the next afternoon. The hospice facility was clean and efficient, the kind of place designed to make dying as comfortable as possible. Margaret met them in the lobby, looking smaller than she had in Montana. He's been asking for you, she told Ethan, every day since I left. Is he coherent? Most of the time. The pain medication makes him drift, but he knows who he is. He knows why he's here. Ethan nodded once, his face carefully blank. Clara started to step back to give them privacy, but Ethan caught her hand. Stay with me, please. They walked down the hall together, Margaret leading the way. She stopped at a door marked 217, knocked softly, then pushed it open. Robert Cole was a skeleton of a man lying in a hospital bed. Clara could see Ethan in his bone structure, in the shape of his jaw, but where Ethan carried himself with quiet strength, Robert just looked hollow. His eyes opened when they entered. They fixed on Ethan with an intensity that made Clara's skin prickle. You came, Robert said, his voice rough and weak. I'm here. Ethan's voice was flat. Mom said you wanted to talk. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For which part? For the beatings? For the words? For walking out? You're going to need to be more specific. Robert's mouth twisted. Even dying there was cruelty in that expression. Still got that smart mouth. Guess I didn't beat all the defiance out of you. Ethan's hand tightened on Clara's. Is that your apology? Reminding me of the abuse? I'm dying, boy. Least you could do is show some respect. Respect. Ethan's voice was low and dangerous. You want respect from the son you told was worthless. From the kid you made feel like every breath he took was a burden. You don't get respect just because you're dying, Dad. You have to earn it. And you never did. Margaret stepped forward. Robert, please. You said you wanted to make amends. I wanted to see him. See if he amounted to anything. Robert's eyes traveled over Ethan with cold assessment. Guess not. Still just a ranch hand scraping by. Just like I said you'd be. Something inside Ethan seemed to break. Clara felt it in the way his hand went slack in hers, saw it in the way his shoulders dropped. We're leaving, Ethan said. Running away. That's all you know how to do, isn't it? Run when things get hard. Ethan stopped at the door. When he turned back, his face was composed, but his eyes were burning. You're right. I do run. I learned it from watching you. You ran from every responsibility, every promise, every chance to be better. The difference is, I'm trying to stop. I'm trying to be different than you. And you know what I already am. You're nothing. You'll always be nothing. Maybe. But I'd rather be nothing on my own terms than something on yours. Ethan looked at his father one last time. I came here hoping to find something closure, understanding, I don't know. But all I found was confirmation that you're exactly who you always were. A small, bitter man who needed to make everyone around him smaller just so you could feel big. He walked out. Clara followed, but not before she saw the expression on Robert's face, not remorse, not regret, just rage, that he was losing his final chance to wound his son. Margaret caught up with them in the parking lot. "Ethan, wait. Why did you bring me here, Mom? Did you really think he'd changed? That he'd be some transformed man asking for forgiveness? I hoped." "You hoped wrong. He's the same person he always was. And you know what the worst part is? You let him do this to me one more time. You brought me here knowing what he was like, and you let him tear me down again." Margaret's face crumpled. "I'm sorry. I thought maybe seeing you successful, seeing you strong." "Successful? I live in a cabin with no hot water, Mom. I send you most of my paycheck because you raised me to believe I owe you that. I spent 6 years hiding in Montana because I couldn't face the world with a criminal record. That's not success. That's survival. You're a good man, Ethan. Better than both of us. I know I am. But I didn't learn that from you or him. I learned it in spite of you." He turned to Clara. "Let's go." They drove to a motel on the edge of town. Ethan didn't speak the entire way. When they got to the room, he sat on the edge of the bed and put his head in his hands. Clara knelt in front of him. "Talk to me." "I don't know what to say. I thought I was ready for that. I thought I could handle seeing him and it wouldn't matter. But standing there listening to him tell me I'm nothing, God. Clara, it was like being 10 years old again. Like nothing I've done in the last 15 years mattered. It matters. You matter." "Do I? Because right now I feel like he was right. I am nothing. I've built nothing. I've become nothing." Clara took his face in her hands, made him look at her. "Listen to me. That man in that hospice bed is dying bitter and alone because he spent his whole life tearing people down instead of building them up. You are not him. You are kind and hardworking and honest. You take care of people even when they don't deserve it. You're trying every day to be better than what you came from. That's not nothing, Ethan. That's everything." "Then why does it feel like I'm failing?" "Because you're measuring yourself by his standards instead of your own. You're letting him define success when his whole life was a failure." Ethan's eyes were wet. "I don't know how to stop hearing his voice in my head telling me I'm not enough." "Then we'll find new voices, better ones, mine if you'll let me." Clara's voice shook. "I see you, Ethan, the real you. And what I see is someone worthy of love, someone worthy of good things, someone who deserves to be chosen, not left behind. Clara, I'm staying." The words came out before she'd fully decided them, but the moment they were spoken, she knew they were true. "What? I'm staying. Not in El Paso, God, no. But in Montana, with you. I'll figure out how to make it work with my career. Freelance, remote assignments, something. But I'm not walking away from this. From us. You can't do that. You'll lose everything. I'll lose my job, maybe, but I won't lose you, and right now that matters more." Ethan pulled back. "No, I won't let you sacrifice your career for me. It's not your decision, it's mine." "Clara, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly. You're scared that if I give up something important for you, I'll resent you for it later. But Ethan, I'm not your mother. I'm not staying out of obligation or guilt. I'm staying because I want to. Because what we have is worth more to me than a job that keeps me on the road 11 months out of 12. What if you're wrong? What if 6 months from now you wake up and realize you made a mistake? Then I'll deal with it. But I'd rather take that risk than spend the rest of my life wondering what we could have been." Ethan stood up, paced to the window. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. You making a huge decision based on feelings instead of logic. Love isn't logical, Ethan. It's a choice. And I'm choosing you." He turned to face her. Don't say that word unless you mean it." "I mean it." Clara's voice was steady. "I love you. I love your stubbornness and your fear and the way you take care of people who don't appreciate it. I love that you're still trying to be good, even though the world's given you every reason not to be. And I love you enough to fight for this when you won't fight for yourself." Ethan crossed the room in 3 strides and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and fierce and full of everything he couldn't say. Clara kissed him back with equal intensity, pouring 3 weeks of longing and frustration and hope into the contact. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ethan pressed his forehead against hers. "I love you too," he whispered. "I've loved you since that first morning at Rosie's when you called me out for running. I just didn't know how to admit it. So admit it now. I love you, Clara Hayes, and I'm terrified of what that means." "Me too, but we'll figure it out together." They spent the night holding each other, talking through logistics and fears and possibilities. Clara would give notice to her magazine, would transition to freelance photography. Ethan would talk to Jack about building onto his cabin, making it livable for 2 people. They'd take it slow. They agreed, give themselves time to adjust. But first, they had one more thing to do. The next morning, they went back to the hospice. Margaret was in the waiting room, looking exhausted. "He's asking for you again," she said to Ethan. "I'm not here for him. I'm here for you." Margaret looked surprised. "What?" "I need to say something, and you need to hear it." Ethan's voice was firm. "I forgive you, Mom, for not protecting me, for choosing shame over your son, for all of it. Not because you've earned it, but because I'm done carrying that weight. I'm done letting you and Dad dictate how I see myself." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "Ethan, I'm also done sending you money. You need to figure out your own financial situation because I can't keep sacrificing my future to make up for the past. I'll help you find resources, connect you with programs, but I'm not your safety net anymore." "I understand. And one more thing. I'm building a life with Clara. A real life. And you can be part of it if you're willing to show up as someone who supports me instead of someone who needs me. But if you can't do that, then we're done." Margaret stood up and hugged her son. It was awkward at first, they'd gone so long without real affection. But slowly, Ethan's arms came up around her. "I'll do better," Margaret said. "I promise. I'll actually try this time. That's all I'm asking." They left El Paso that afternoon. In the rearview mirror, the city disappeared into desert heat waves. Ethan reached across the truck and took Clara's hand. "You really meant it about staying. I really meant it. I'm still scared this won't work." "So am I, but I'm more scared of not trying." Ethan smiled, small but real. "When do you have to tell your editor?" "I'll call her tonight. Rip the Band-Aid off." "What will you say?" Clara thought about it. "That I found something more important than a byline, and that I'm not apologizing for choosing it." Clara made the call that night from a rest stop outside Amarillo. She sat in Ethan's truck with her phone in her hand for 10 minutes before she found the courage to dial. Melissa picked up on the second ring. "Tell me you're calling with good news." "I'm not coming back to Denver. I'm resigning effective immediately." There was a long silence. Then, "Are you out of your mind?" "Probably, but I'm doing it anyway." "Clara, you have one of the best portfolios I've seen in 10 years. You could work anywhere. Why are you throwing that away for some cowboy in Montana?" The dismissive tone made Clara's jaw tighten. "Because he's not just some cowboy. And because for the first time in my career, I'm choosing something that matters more than a byline. You'll regret this. Give it 6 months, and you'll be calling me begging for your job back. Then I'll deal with that when it happens. But right now, this is what I need to do." Melissa's voice went cold. "You're making a mistake. A huge one. Don't expect me to fix it when you realize that." Clara hung up and sat there feeling the weight of what she'd just done. Ethan came back from the restroom and slid into the driver's seat, took one look at her face and said, "That bad. She thinks I'm throwing my life away." Maybe she's right. Clara turned to him sharply. Don't you dare start second-guessing this now. I'm just saying you had a good thing going. A career people would kill for, and you gave it up for me. I gave it up for us. There's a difference, and if you keep trying to take that choice away from me, we're going to have a problem." Ethan started the truck. "I just don't want you to wake up in 5 years hating me for what you gave up. Then don't give me a reason to. Be worth it, Ethan. That's all I'm asking. Be the person I chose. What if I can't be? Then we'll figure it out. But stop borrowing trouble from the future. We've got enough to deal with right now. They drove through the night in shifts, trading off every few hours. By the time they crossed back into Montana 2 days later, Clara felt like she'd lived an entire lifetime in the span of a week. Sweetwater looked exactly the same, but everything felt different. Clara wasn't a photographer passing through anymore. She was someone building a life here, and that shift in perspective made the town look simultaneously smaller and more significant. They went straight to Ethan's cabin. Walking through that door felt different too, not like visiting, but like coming home. Ethan set down their bags and turned to Clara with an expression that was equal parts hope and terror. So, you're really doing this? I'm really doing this. Where do we start? Clara looked around the tiny space, one room, minimal furniture, no real kitchen to speak of. We start by making this place livable for 2 people, and then we figure out how I'm going to make money while living in the middle of nowhere. Over the next week, they threw themselves into the work. Jack Morrison, true to his word, helped them expand the cabin. He brought in a crew, and they added a second room, installed a proper water heater, fixed the sagging porch. Ethan insisted on paying for it himself, which meant taking out a loan he could barely afford, but Clara understood what it meant to him. This was his contribution, his way of proving he could provide something real. Clara set up a website advertising freelance photography services. She reached out to magazines and newspapers, pitched stories about rural Montana, about ranch life, about the disappearing West. Some responded with interest. Most didn't respond at all. Money got tight fast. Clara had some savings, but they were burning through it faster than she'd expected. Ethan's ranch salary barely covered the loan payments and his mother's medical bills, even after he'd reduced what he sent her. They ate cheap food, turned off the heat at night to save on propane, drove only when absolutely necessary. 3 weeks after they'd returned from Texas, Clara was at Rosie's diner working on her laptop when a man walked in, mid-40s, expensive camera, hanging around his neck, definitely not from around here. He approached her table. "You're Clara Hayes, right? The photographer." Clara looked up warily. "Who's asking?" "Marcus Chen. I'm a photo editor for National Geographic. I saw your work in that travel magazine piece about Montana. Really stunning stuff." Clara's heart jumped. "Thank you. I'm actually here scouting for a story we're doing on disappearing American ranching communities. Your editor, former editor, I guess, mentioned you'd relocated to Montana. Said you might be interested in freelance work." "Melissa sent you?" "Not directly. But when I told her we needed someone who understood this world from the inside, she gave me your name. Said you were the best she'd ever worked with, even if you were crazy for leaving." Marcus pulled out a chair. "Mind if I sit?" They talked for an hour. The assignment would take 3 months, would pay more than Clara had made in a year at the magazine, and would give her legitimate credentials as a freelance photographer. It was exactly the break she needed. There was only one problem. "The catch is you'd need to travel," Marcus said. "We're documenting ranches across 5 states, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico, Texas. You'd be on the road most of that time." Clara felt her stomach sink. "How much time?" 2 weeks in each location, give or take. You could come home between shoots, but the schedule's pretty tight." "Can I think about it?" "Sure, but I need an answer by Friday. We start shooting in 2 weeks. Clara went home to the cabin and found Ethan repairing fence posts in what would eventually be their front yard. She told him about the offer. He listened without interrupting, his face carefully neutral. When she finished, he said, "You should take it." Just like that. It's a good opportunity, great money, exactly the kind of work you wanted. It would mean being apart for 3 months. I know. And you're okay with that? Ethan drove the post into the ground with 3 hard strikes. I'm not okay with it, but I'm also not going to be the reason you turn down a job that could launch your freelance career. We just got back together. We're still figuring out how to live in the same space. Going away for 3 months right now seems like terrible timing. When would be good timing? There's never going to be a perfect moment, Clara. You taught me that. She studied his face, trying to read what he wasn't saying. You're scared I'll leave and not come back. Little bit, yeah. I'm not your mother, Ethan. I'm not going to disappear the second things get hard. I know that up here, he tapped his head. Getting my gut to believe it is harder. Clara walked over and took the mallet from his hands. Look at me. I'm taking this job because it's good money and good work, but I'm coming back. Every break they give me, I'm coming back here, to you, to this cabin we're building together. That's not going to change just because I'm working in Wyoming or Texas for a few weeks. You promise? I promise. He pulled her close, held her tight enough that she could feel his heart hammering against her chest. Okay, then take the job. Make it work. Clara called Marcus that afternoon and accepted. The next 2 weeks were a blur of preparation, buying equipment, planning her route-making lists of what she'd need. Ethan helped where he could, but she could see the tension building in him as her departure date approached. The night before she left, they lay in bed in the dark, neither sleeping. Talk to me, Clara said. About what? About what you're thinking right now. Because I can feel you pulling away, and I need to know why. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. What if you get out there and realize how much bigger the world is than Sweetwater? What if you remember what it was like to have a real career and decide this life isn't enough? This life is enough. You are enough. You say that now. But Clara, I've watched you work. You come alive when you're behind that camera. You get this energy, this purpose. What if you get out there and remember that feeling and realize you can't have it stuck in Montana with me? Clara turned on the bedside lamp, made him look at her. Listen to me very carefully. I love photography. I always will. But I also love you. And those two things don't have to be at war with each other. I can have both. I am having both. For now. Yes, for now. And then for tomorrow, and the day after that, and every day I choose to. That's how this works, Ethan. I keep choosing you. Every single day. What if there's a day you don't? Then we'll deal with it. But assuming it's going to happen and sabotaging what we have now, that's just fear talking. And I thought we agreed we were done letting fear make our decisions. Ethan pulled her closer. I'm trying. I really am. I know you are. And I love you for it. She left the next morning before sunrise. Ethan stood on the porch and watched her pack her truck, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. When she came back for one last goodbye, he kissed her like he was memorizing the feel of it. Call me when you get there, he said. I will. Every night if you want. I want? Then that's what you'll get. Clara touched his face. I love you. That's not changing just because I'm working. I love you too. Be safe. The first location was a ranch outside Billings, only 2 hours away. Clara called Ethan that night as promised, then the next night, then the next. They fell into a routine calls before bed texts throughout the day. Ethan sending her pictures of the cabin improvements, Clara sending him shots from her work. But by the second week, the strain was starting to show. Ethan's texts got shorter, less frequent. When they talked on the phone, he sounded distant. What's wrong? Clara asked on their 10th night apart. Nothing, just tired. Ethan, don't do this. Don't shut me out because I'm not physically there. I'm not shutting you out. Yes, you are. I can hear it in your voice. Talk to me. He sighed heavily. It's just hard, Clara. Coming home to an empty cabin every night. Cooking for one. Waking up alone. I thought I could handle it, but it's bringing up all this old stuff about being left behind. Clara's chest ached. I'm not leaving you behind. I'm working. There's a difference. I know that logically, but feelings aren't logical. Do you want me to come home early? I can probably get Marcus to rearrange the schedule. No, don't do that. This is important for your career. I'm struggling, and I need to figure out how to deal with that without making it your problem. It is my problem. We're in this together, remember. That means your struggles are mine too. They talked for another hour, working through his fears and her guilt, trying to find solid ground in the space between them. By the time they hung up, Clara felt marginally better, but she could tell Ethan was still carrying weight he wasn't sharing. The next location was Wyoming. Clara drove there on a Sunday and called Ethan from the road. He didn't answer. She tried again an hour later. Still nothing. When he finally called back that night, his voice was flat. Sorry, was working late. On a Sunday. Jack needed help with something. Clara knew he was lying, but didn't call him on it. How are you? Fine. Ethan? I'm fine, Clara. Just tired. Can we talk tomorrow? I need to sleep. Yeah. Okay. I love you. Love you too. He hung up before she could say anything else. Clara sat in her motel room staring at her phone, feeling the distance between them like a physical thing. The pattern continued for the next 2 weeks. Ethan pulling away Clara, trying to reach him, both of them pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. By the time she finished the Wyoming shoot, Clara was ready to quit the whole assignment and go home. She called Marcus. I need a break, a week off between this location and the next one. We're on a tight schedule, Clara. I can give you 3 days. Then I'll take 3 days. She drove straight through from Wyoming to Sweetwater 12 hours without stopping. It was past midnight when she pulled up to the cabin, but the lights were on. Ethan answered the door in his work clothes, surprise clear on his face. You're supposed to be in Wyoming. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Clara pushed past him into the cabin. We need to talk. It's late. I don't care how late it is. You've been pulling away for 2 weeks and I'm done pretending I don't notice. So either we deal with this now, or I pack my stuff and go back to Denver permanently. Your choice. Ethan's face went pale. You'd do that, just leave. If the alternative is staying with someone who's checking out emotionally? Yes, I would, because I didn't give up my career to be with someone who won't actually be with me. I am with you. No, you're not. You're here in body, but you've already decided I'm going to leave, so you're protecting yourself by leaving first. And I get it, Ethan. I understand why you do it, but I can't keep fighting to stay when you keep pushing me away. He turned away from her. You don't understand what it's like, watching you drive away, wondering if this is the time you don't come back. You're right. I don't understand, because every time I leave, I tell you I'm coming back. I call you every night. I text you throughout the day. I do everything I can to show you this is real, and it's still not enough. It's not about you not being enough. Then what is it about? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're determined to sabotage this no matter what I do. Ethan spun to face her, and she saw tears in his eyes. I'm scared, Clara. I'm terrified that I'm not built for this, that I'm too damaged to have something good and hold on to it. And every day you're gone, that voice in my head gets louder, telling me you're going to figure that out and leave for good. Clara felt her anger drain away. Come here. He didn't move. She crossed to him, took his hands in hers. You are not too damaged. You are not broken beyond repair. You're just scared, and I am too. But Ethan, we can't let that fear run our relationship. We have to fight it together. I don't know how. Then we learn. Together. Starting now. She squeezed his hands. I need you to trust me. Not perfectly, not all at once, but a little bit more each day. Can you do that? What if I fail? Then you fail and we try again. But you have to actually try, Ethan. You can't just give up before we've even really started. He pulled her into his arms, buried his face in her hair. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for pulling away. I know. But you have to stop. You have to let me in even when it's scary. I'll try. I promise I'll try. They spent the next 3 days reconnecting, talking honestly about their fears, making plans for how to handle the rest of the assignment, setting boundaries about communication. By the time Clara left for Colorado, they were on steadier ground, but she could still see the fear in Ethan's eyes when he kissed her goodbye. The Colorado shoot went better. Ethan texted her regularly. Actually answered when she called, seemed more present in their conversations. Clara started to relax, started to believe they might actually make this work. Then Jack Morrison called her on her third week in Colorado. "Clara, it's Jack. We need to talk about Ethan." Her stomach dropped. "What happened? Is he hurt?" "Not physically, but he's not doing well. He's working himself into the ground, pulling double shifts, barely eating or sleeping. I'm worried about him. I'll come home." "That's not what he needs. He needs to learn how to function without you there holding him together. But I thought you should know. Thank you for telling me." Clara hung up and immediately called Ethan. He answered on the fifth ring, sounding exhausted. "Jack called me," she said without preamble. Damn it, he had no right. "He was worried about you. So am I. What's going on?" "Nothing. I'm fine." "Don't lie to me, Ethan. We agreed we weren't going to do that anymore." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see you deciding not to come back. It's driving me crazy, so I just work until I'm too tired to think. Ethan, this has to stop. You're going to make yourself sick." "I don't know how to stop. I don't know how to turn off my brain." Clara made a decision. "I'm coming home this weekend. Just for 2 days. We're going to deal with this." "You can't keep coming home every time I have a bad week. Watch me." She drove back to Sweetwater on Friday night and found Ethan asleep at the kitchen table, his head on his arms. He looked thinner with dark circles under his eyes that made her heart ache. She woke him gently. "Hey, I'm home." He lifted his head, blinked at her like he wasn't sure she was real. "Clara." "Yeah, it's me. Come on, let's get you to bed." She guided him to the bedroom, helped him out of his boots. He fell asleep almost instantly, and she sat beside him, watching him breathe, wondering how they were going to survive the next 6 weeks of her assignment, when he was barely surviving the weeks they'd already done. The next morning, she made him breakfast and sat him down. "We need to make some changes." "I know. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing and listen. First, you're going to start seeing someone, a therapist. There's one in Billings who specializes in trauma and anxiety. Jack already gave me her number." "Clara, I can't afford—" "We'll figure it out. This is more important than money. Second, you're going to stop working double shifts. You need sleep and you need to take care of yourself. Third, I'm going to come home every other weekend instead of waiting until breaks between locations. Marcus approved it. You're rearranging your whole schedule for me." "Yes, I am, because that's what people do when they love each other. They adjust, they compromise, they show up." Ethan's eyes were wet. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway." He laughed a small broken sound and pulled her into his lap. "I'm going to get better at this. I promise." "I know you are, but you have to actually do the work, Ethan. I can't do it for you." "I will. I'll call the therapist on Monday." They spent the weekend together, quiet and careful with each other. Sunday evening came too quickly, and Clara had to drive back to Colorado. This time when Ethan kissed her goodbye, she felt less fear in it, more trust. "I love you," he said. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "I'm not giving up. Not now, not ever." The next month was hard, but manageable. Ethan started therapy and actually seemed to be benefiting from it. He stopped working himself to death, started sleeping better, was more present in their phone calls. Clara came home every other weekend like she'd promised, and slowly, painfully slowly, they built confidence in what they were building. The Texas shoot was her last location. 2 weeks documenting ranches outside El Paso, and then she'd be done. She'd be home for good. Clara arrived on a Tuesday and dove into the work. The ranches were beautiful, the light was perfect, and her shots were some of the best she'd ever taken. Marcus was thrilled. On Friday afternoon, Clara got a call from a number she didn't recognize. "Hello. Is this Clara Hayes?" A woman's voice, professional and crisp. "Yes, who's this?" "My name is Sarah Martinez. I'm a curator at the Museum of Western Heritage in Denver. I saw your work in the National Geographic preview, and I'm interested in featuring your Montana Ranch series in our upcoming exhibition on disappearing American landscapes." Clara's heart stopped. "I'm sorry, what?" "It would be a 6-month showing in our main gallery. We'd print and frame 30 of your best images. There would be an opening reception, media coverage, the whole works. This is the kind of exposure most photographers dream about." Wow! That's incredible. "There's just one thing. We'd need you here in Denver to work with us on the installation and to be available for press events. Probably 3 months of your time starting in 6 weeks." And just like that, Clara understood the universe was testing her one more time. "Can I think about it?" Clara asked, her voice barely steady. "Of course, but I'll need your answer by Monday. This is a time-sensitive opportunity." Clara hung up and sat in her motel room staring at the wall. 3 months in Denver. The kind of exposure that could make her career permanent, that could set her up for life. Everything she'd worked toward for 10 years handed to her on a silver platter, and all it would cost was 3 more months away from Ethan. She called him that night. He picked up on the first ring. "Hey, how's Texas?" "I got offered something. A museum exhibition in Denver." She heard his breath catch. "That's incredible, Clara. That's huge." "It would mean 3 months there, starting in 6 weeks. The silence that followed felt like it lasted an hour. "Ethan, I'm here. Just processing." His voice was careful, controlled. "What did you tell them?" "That I'd think about it, but I wanted to talk to you first." "Why?" "It's your career, your decision. Because it affects both of us. Because I need to know if you can handle another 3 months apart. Don't make this about me. Don't turn down an opportunity like this because you're worried about my issues. Your issues are my issues. That's what being in a relationship means." Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then, "Take the job, Clara." Just like that. Just like that. "This is your dream. I'm not going to be the person who stands in the way of it." "But," "No buts. You take the job. We figure out the rest. That's how this works, right? We adjust. We compromise. We show up." Clara felt tears burning her eyes. "Are you sure?" "I'm terrified. But yeah, I'm sure. You've been sacrificing for me for months now. It's my turn to sacrifice for you. I don't want either of us sacrificing. I want us both choosing. Then I'm choosing this. I'm choosing to support you even when it's hard, even when it scares me. I love you. I love you too. Now go call that curator and tell her yes before she gives the spot to someone else." Clara called Sarah Martinez back that night and accepted. Then she finished her Texas shoot in a daze, half excited and half terrified about what came next. She drove back to Sweetwater the following week. Ethan was waiting on the cabin porch when she arrived, and the way he pulled her into his arms told her everything she needed to know about how hard the last few weeks had been for him. "I missed you," he said into her hair. "I missed you too. But we did it. The whole assignment. 3 months and we made it work. Barely. Barely counts." She pulled back to look at him. "How are you really?" "Better. The therapy's helping. I'm learning how to catch the spiral before it gets bad. And I'm learning that being scared doesn't mean something's wrong. It just means I care." "That's huge." "It's progress anyway." He took her hand, led her inside. "Come on, I want to show you something." The cabin had been transformed in her absence. There was a proper kitchen now, with real counters and cabinets. The bedroom had been painted. There were curtains on the windows and a rug on the floor. It actually looked like a home instead of a place someone was just surviving. "Ethan, this is beautiful. When did you do all this?" "Nights when I couldn't sleep. Weekends. Figured if you're going to be gone for another 3 months, I should make sure there's something worth coming home to." Clara felt her throat tighten. This was always worth coming home to. "Yeah, but now it's got a working oven." He smiled, but there was vulnerability in his eyes. "I'm trying, Clara, to build something stable, to be someone you can count on." "You already are." They spent the next 2 weeks together before Clara had to leave for Denver. They talked about logistics. Ethan would drive down to visit when he could get away from the ranch. Clara would come home every other weekend again. They talked about money the museum was paying Clara well, and between that and what she'd made from the National Geographic assignment, they'd finally have some breathing room. They talked about the future carefully, neither wanting to jinx it, but both aware that they were building toward something permanent. On Clara's last night before Denver, they drove out to a clearing Ethan knew spread a blanket under the stars. They lay there in silence for a while, just being together. "Can I tell you something?" Ethan said finally. "Anything. I'm proud of you. For taking this opportunity. For building this career. I know I haven't always been good at showing it, but watching you succeed, it means everything to me." Clara turned to look at him. "Really? Really? You're doing what you love and you're brilliant at it. That's not something to apologize for. It's something to celebrate. Even though it means we're apart. Even though, because you being happy and fulfilled makes us stronger, not weaker." Clara kissed him, then soft and slow. When they pulled apart, she said, "When I get back from Denver, I want us to talk about next steps, real next steps." "Like what?" "Like marriage, like building a life together that's not just survival, but actual partnership." Ethan's eyes widened. "Are you proposing to me?" "I'm saying I want to, when the time is right, when we're both ready." "I'm ready now." "Liar. You're still working through therapy." He laughed. "Okay, fair. But I'm getting there. And when I'm really solid and sure, ask me. I'll say yes." "That's a promise." "That's a promise." Clara left for Denver the next morning with that promise tucked close to her heart. The exhibition work was intense. Choosing images, working with designers, writing wall text, doing press interviews. She threw herself into it completely, and the result was stunning. Her photographs of Montana ranches, of cowboys and cattle, and endless sky captured something essential about a world that was disappearing. The opening reception was packed. Art critics, photographers, museum donors, all of them circulating through the gallery saying complimentary things about her work. Clara smiled and answered questions and felt oddly hollow in the middle of all the attention. She kept looking at the door, hoping to see Ethan walk through it. He'd promised to come, had driven down that morning, but the opening started an hour ago and there was still no sign of him. Clara checked her phone for the 20th time. No messages. Sarah Martinez appeared at her elbow. "You okay? You look distracted." "I'm fine, just waiting for someone." "Well, you should mingle. There's a collector from New York who wants to talk about buying prints." Clara forced herself to focus. She talked to the collector, to the critics, to everyone who wanted a piece of her attention. But part of her mind stayed focused on that door, wondering where Ethan was trying not to spiral into old fears. Finally, 2 hours into the reception, he appeared. He was wearing clothes she'd never seen before, a button-down shirt, nice jeans, actual dress shoes instead of his work boots. He looked uncomfortable and out of place, but he'd shown up. Clara excused herself from a conversation mid-sentence and crossed the gallery to him. "You're here. I'm sorry I'm late. There was an accident on the highway. Traffic was backed up for miles. I thought I was worried that I'd changed my mind." "Clara, look at me." He took her hands. "I drove 5 hours to be here. I bought new clothes. I'm standing in a room full of people I don't know looking at photographs I don't understand. I'm here because you're here. Nothing could have kept me away." She wanted to kiss him, but they were surrounded by people. "Thank you for coming, for all of it, for all of—" "You're brilliant, you know that. These photos, Clara, they're incredible. I had no idea you saw the ranch world this way. You gave me something to see. All of you did." An older woman approached them. "Clara, dear, you must introduce me to this handsome man." "Mrs. Pemberton, this is Ethan Cole. Ethan, this is Victoria Pemberton, one of the museum's major donors." Victoria extended her hand. "Pleasure to meet you. Are you a photographer as well?" "No, ma'am. I'm a ranch hand. Most of what you're looking at in these photos, that's my world." "How fascinating. You must tell me all about it." Ethan shot Clara a panicked look, but she just smiled. "I'll let you two talk. I need to make the rounds." She watched him from across the room as he talked to Victoria, saw how he relaxed gradually, how the initial awkwardness gave way to genuine conversation. He was trying. For her. And that meant more than any exhibition or review ever could. The reception ran late. By the time they left, Clara was exhausted but elated. They drove back to the apartment she was renting for the duration of her stay in Denver. "That was something," Ethan said as they climbed the stairs. "All those people wanting to talk to you about your work." "It was overwhelming. You were amazing, natural, like you belonged there." Clara unlocked the door. "I did belong there. It's my work. But Ethan, I also belong in Sweetwater. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive." "I'm starting to understand that." He followed her inside, looked around at the temporary space. "This is nicer than our cabin." "It's not home, though." "No, it's not." They fell into bed together, too tired for anything except holding each other. Clara pressed her face into Ethan's chest and breathed him in wood smoke and Montana wind and something essentially him. "I'm glad you came," she whispered. "Where else would I be?" The next 2 months passed in a strange rhythm, Clara working in Denver, Ethan visiting when he could, both of them learning how to be together across distance. It wasn't perfect. There were hard nights when Clara felt lonely in her temporary apartment. There were moments when Ethan's old fears surfaced, and he'd pull away emotionally. But they were learning to catch those moments faster, to talk through them, instead of letting them fester. Clara came home to Sweetwater every other weekend like she'd promised. She'd walk into the cabin and Ethan would be there waiting, and every time it felt like proof that this was real, that they could make it work. 6 weeks before the exhibition was scheduled to close, Clara got another call from Sarah Martinez. "We're extending your show," Sarah said. "The response has been incredible. We want to keep it up for another 3 months." Clara's stomach sank. 3 more months. "I know that's longer than we originally discussed, but the board is insistent. Your work is drawing crowds we haven't seen in years. And Clara, there's interest from other museums. This could turn into a traveling exhibition. Houston, Santa Fe, Seattle. A year of guaranteed work and exposure." "I need to think about it." "Of course. Take a few days." Clara hung up and called Ethan immediately. Something happened. She told him about the extension, about the potential traveling show. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, "What do you want to do?" "I don't know. A year ago, this would have been an easy yes. It's everything I've worked for. But now you have other things to consider. Now I have you to consider. And I'm tired, Ethan. I'm tired of living out of a suitcase. I'm tired of temporary apartments and weekend visits. I want to come home. I want to actually build the life we keep talking about. So tell them no." "But what if I regret it? What if this is the peak of my career and I'm walking away from it?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then, "Can I tell you what I learned in therapy? Please. You can't live your life based on what you might regret. You have to make choices based on what you want right now in this moment. And trust that future you will understand why you made the choice you made." "When did you get so wise?" "When I started paying someone $100 an hour to teach me how to think." He paused. "But Clara, for what it's worth, I think you already know what you want. You're just scared to admit it." "What do I want?" "You want to come home. You want to stop chasing the next big thing and start building something stable. You want what we have in Sweetwater more than you want a year on the road showing your work." Clara felt tears on her face. "You're right. That's exactly what I want." "Then take it, choose it, and stop apologizing for it." She called Sarah back the next day and turned down the extension. Sarah tried to convince her to reconsider, painted pictures of the opportunities she was walking away from. Clara listened politely and then said no again. "I appreciate everything the museum has done for me," Clara said, "but I'm ready to go home." 2 weeks later, the exhibition closed. Clara packed up her Denver apartment, loaded everything into her truck, and drove back to Montana for good. Ethan was waiting on the porch when she pulled up. He'd built a second chair and painted both of them dark green. There were flowers planted along the porch rail. He'd made this place into something worth coming home to. Clara got out of the truck and walked into his arms. "I'm home. For real this time. For real. For real. No more assignments. No more temporary apartments. Just this. Just us." Ethan held her tight. "I almost don't believe it." "Believe it. I chose this. I chose you, and I'm not changing my mind." They spent the evening unpacking her truck, finding places for her things among his. It should have been cramped, should have felt like too much in too small a space, but instead, it felt right. Like puzzle pieces finally fitting together. That night, lying in their bed in their cabin, Clara said, "I have something to ask you." "What's that?" She turned to face him. "Marry me." Ethan went very still. "What?" "Marry me. I know we said we'd wait until you were solid and sure, but Ethan, you are solid. You're surer than you've ever been. You supported me through 3 months away, then another 3 months, then you let me make my own choice about the extension without trying to influence it. You built us a home. You did the work on yourself. You're ready. And so am I. Clara, I'm not asking you to prove anything, or be perfect, or have everything figured out. I'm just asking you to choose me every day for the rest of our lives. Can you do that?" Ethan's eyes were bright with tears. "Yes, God, yes, I can do that." "Then say yes." "Yes, I'll marry you. Yes." Clara kissed him, and it tasted like promise and Montana wind and coming home. When they pulled apart, both of them were crying. "I don't have a ring," Clara said, laughing through tears. "I do." He got up, went to the dresser, pulled out a small velvet box. "I bought this 2 months ago. Figured I'd ask you when you came home from Denver, but this is better. You asking me. That feels right." He opened the box. Inside was a simple gold band with 3 small stones. Nothing fancy, but honest and real. "It's perfect," Clara said. "Put it on me." She slid the ring onto his finger, and he slid one onto hers that matched. They sat there in bed wearing each other's promises, and Clara thought about all the ways they'd fought to get here, all the fear they'd conquered, all the times one of them had chosen to stay when leaving would have been easier. "We should tell people," Ethan said. "Tomorrow. Tonight, let's just be us." They fell asleep, holding each other, and when Clara woke in the morning, the first thing she saw was sunlight through the window, and Ethan watching her with an expression of pure wonder. "Morning," she said. "Morning, you're still here." "I'm always going to be here. When are you going to believe that?" "Maybe after about 50 years. Ask me then." Clara laughed. "Deal." They got married 3 months later at the ranch. Jack Morrison officiated. Rosie handled the food, and Margaret flew in from Texas and cried through the whole ceremony. It was small and simple, and exactly what they wanted. When Jack asked if they had vows, Clara spoke first. "Ethan, you taught me that loving someone means staying even when it's hard, means showing up even when you're scared, means choosing them every single day, not because it's easy, but because they're worth it. You're worth it. You're worth every sacrifice, every hard conversation, every moment of doubt. I choose you today and every day after." Ethan's voice shook when he spoke. "Clara, you taught me that I'm not what happened to me, that I'm not my father's words or my mother's shame or my own worst thoughts about myself. You taught me that I'm worthy of being chosen, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving you right. I choose you. I choose us. I choose this life we're building together." They kissed as husband and wife while their small gathering of friends cheered, and Clara thought this was what happiness felt like, not perfect, not without fear or struggle, but real and hard-won and absolutely worth fighting for. After the reception, they drove out to their spot under the stars. They lay on a blanket looking up at the endless Montana sky, both wearing rings, now both finally believing this was real. "You know what's funny?" Clara said. "What?" "You spent so long thinking you weren't beautiful enough, good enough, worthy enough for me. But Ethan, you were always more than enough. You just needed someone to show you. And you needed someone who wouldn't let you hide behind your work, Someone who made you choose between playing it safe and taking a real risk. We saved each other. Yeah, we did. Clara turned to look at her husband. So what now? Now we live. We build our life here. We have hard days and good days, and we handle both. We keep choosing each other. Every single day. Every single day. Clara smiled and settled back against him, feeling the solid weight of his arm around her, the steady beat of his heart beneath her ear. She'd given up the traveling exhibition. She'd given up the guaranteed year of work and exposure. She'd chosen a cabin in Montana and a man who'd spent his whole life believing he wasn't enough. And she'd never made a better choice. Because loving someone wasn't about finding someone perfect or easy or without scars. It was about finding someone worth staying for, worth fighting for, worth choosing every morning when you woke up and every night when you fell asleep. It was about building something real together, brick by brick, choice by choice, day by day. Ethan Cole had whispered that she was too beautiful for him, had tried to choose her happiness over his own, had nearly walked away to protect her from himself. But Clara had stayed, had fought, had chosen him right back. And together, they'd built something neither of them could have built alone, a love that was hard-won and honest and absolutely unshakable. She was home, she was chosen, and she was exactly where she was meant to be.